This is, I think, a very unique specimen. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. Because I've seen specimens of smokers' lungs, various pathologies. This is a very unique pathology.
Yeah, unfortunately, it still happens today.
Yeah.
But what it shows in a rather dramatic fashion is what happens if you aspirate something like a peanut.
Yeah.
And particularly if you're a child, young children don't have molars. So
Right,
they can't
so
chew
crush
properly.
Yeah.
So that it's, again, a risk factor if you want.
I think people don't realize how narrow the trachea actually is and how easy it is for it to become obstructed by just simple, small, everyday objects.
That's right.
Yeah.
You see the size of the brain, and people are, when they come,
Yeah.
they're actually astounded to see the brain being so small
Right.
relative to the spinal cord, and
Yes.
that sort of
We
thing.
tend to assume that our brain should be much bigger than it actually
That's right.
is. Yeah.
But in fact, that's a normal adult brain.
It's a normal adult. Yeah. Because it almost looks like it's taking up the entire stomach, because that is clearly the anatomy of the stomach, right? The sort of the antrum and the.
I think it's basically filling the whole stomach, but I
Wow.
think the whole thing is in the whole stomach.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of hair.
Yeah. That's definitely a lot of hair. That's one of the things that people like. I mean, people come by and they say, "Oh, I remember the hairball."
Yeah.
And
That's something that sticks with you from your medical training.
Yeah.
These were made here at McGill.
These were made just a floor below us.
Yeah.
And all from 3D printer.
Okay.
And some of them, you see the hearts on the left have been painted in order to...
Right, because the heart's not normally in Technicolor.
That's correct.
As somebody used to joke, I mean, we tend to think that in the body that the arteries are red, the veins are blue. In reality, you open up the human body, everything's brown.
That's right. But for teaching, like with the vessels illustrated there, that's why these are being done, of course. It's for medical student teaching. Really in the early 19th century, it started that medical schools used bodies for dissection, and that became a very important part of medical student teaching. So they had to get bodies from somewhere.
Yeah.
And some of them came from patients who died in the hospital.
Right.
But the number of students that were involved, as it increased over the century, meant that it was harder and harder to get bodies. And so there were some people who actually went and grave robbed, resurrectionists as they were called. They resurrected the bodies.
I mean, that used to be how universities, as you say, not just here, but elsewhere, even in the UK, even in most of Europe, that's how universities would get enough bodies for dissection.
A description by one of the medical students on how to rob the grave. He was telling it. The safest way is after obtaining information of a recent internment. You go down when it's snowing, so people aren't out walking around. Cut off the lid, place a loop around the neck, pull out the corpse, cover everything with snow so you can't trace your steps, and put it on the sleigh and off you go. And they were doing that until the 1870s, when the Anatomy Act was amended and teeth put into it, and then it became reasonable.
Right. And so from late 19th, early 20th century onwards, these are all patient volunteers usually, right? People who have usually made this decision even before they've died, right? They've usually specified this in their wills or in their living statements.
That's correct. It's all done through the government.
Right. Anybody who's taken a high school biology class has seen a skeleton in their classroom, but most of those are plastic or some sort of synthetic material. This is actual bone. This is a full human skeleton.
This was at one time a real person.
Yeah, and all the bones have been re-articulated, and they're held together with wires, obviously, and supported. But these are the actual bones. You can actually see all the levels of detail. You can see all the grooves where the muscle attachments would have been. I guess we don't see these very much anymore. And this is historical because this skeleton is from the 1800s.
This is one of the oldest specimens in the museum. In fact, one of the oldest objects, if you want to call it that, of McGill University, 1826.
Wow. So even predating the founding of the medical school.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So it was used by one of the founders of the medical school, John Stevenson. And they started teaching medicine and medical classes before McGill was officially incorporated.
Right.
And they used this presumably in their early anatomy discussions.
Wow.